Alright, just going live from the current location with a few topics to discuss. This is a distorted example of my physical appearance right now. Regardless, we're going to proceed with what should be a randomized search really quickly as the device has been manually physically rotated. So really quickly, let's okay, what are examples of abuse of power? Is this okay? Constantly reminding an employee that they can be fired or replaced, humiliating an employee in front of his colleagues, forcing an employee to work overtime multiple times a week without additional pay, boss mistreating employees when she is in a bad mood, condescending reactions to employee questions. So really quickly, as far as conflict management, interpersonal goals that need and development that need to occur, these milestones need to hit the psychosocial and nutritional component of hierarchy that needs to exist for an individual, regardless of chronological age, to be capable of a certain level of maturity and differential reasoning and cognitive function and critical thinking. It doesn't inhibit their executive function of verbalized communication and emotion regulation, to be capable of professionalism. And that means to be capable of managing a real-time crisis. So they have to know plan. There's a lot of organizational, the employee has to have organizational skill sets. The employer, the manager, the orientation has to ensure that, for example, like a clear pathway for an exit. So when someone's at work, their inferential reasoning, the software tools and the hardware tools that need to exist, whether it's an electronic document for filing a grievance and easily accessing and finding that instead of going to a card index in a library and having to involve however many people to find the library, and if the librarian's not at their desk, that is what we're discussing. So there's inconvenience and people of certain attitude and hierarchy. Hierarchy involves attitude and psychosocial development, and there's nothing wrong with opportunities for growth, but people have to meet a certain standard. So subjective, objective, we try to remain objective without assumptions, most specifically to dismantle unnecessary, accidental, probably humiliating setbacks that maybe not to overgeneralize, people would go through, right? Because how can you know better until you learn? There's an opportunity for growth. Subjective, objective, without inherent bias. So really honing in on that as a topic to research for indication of self-assessment. If there's issues of inferential reasoning is skewed or distorted, but there's a conviction of I'm allowed to have my opinion, but that's different. And then a mood disorder is sometimes people have a tough day because they realize there's some sort of there's something didn't work out for them, and coping with that might be more arduous than not, but that's usually not a topic to be discussed in the workplace, and it's not to be obvious to people at work. So that's not professional. I'm not certain if any more professionals have better examples of we just don't talk. There are some topics at work that you should never talk about: food, weight, working out, and any bereavement. Really quickly, so now in the customer service industry, the hospitality and tourism industry, when an employee abuses power and purposely tries to humiliate a frequent flyer, for lack of better words, that's like almost even worse. And then coworkers don't stop. They don't make an effort if they're afraid for their safety, and the district manager doesn't care what's going on. So talking about dynamics of communication and workplace, the successful workplace, and how is that defined? Nobody's really, of course, there has to be standards of camaraderie, right? Meaning effective communication. And maybe there are some emergency department personnel that can discuss how they effectively stay in their space, but work as a team during high volume, low volume. And that is not the cafe. I'm sorry, but that's not the cafe. The cafe is good for time management, prioritization, and technical skill set. Certain cafes get extremely busy, and that is so rewarding, right? To know that a certain standard of professionalism and hospitality was provided. We're not denigrating that. That's so important. Every person has to learn that regardless of their attitude. So a lot of people will say, no matter how educated you are, go work in the hospitality industry, like the restaurant business, because the skill sets that you're able to hone in on, where you remove merit and attention through merit and accomplishments, will never stop serving you well, right? So maintaining executive function of verbalized communication in a cascading, high volume, multi-functional standard, and maintaining open lines of communication while successfully completing technical skill sets is a skill that every person has to learn. And the issue is that what's briefing and what's debriefing. So debriefing, usually on the floor, that's not how you're supposed to do. Deep breath, right? But not. And if that's too often for you, then somewhere else, right? But for a certain amount of time, people say work 3 to 6, 9 months, or 12 months. And even if you decide that's not for you, as long as that's not getting in the way of you completing your job description, and it's not a hindrance or an imposition of burden to the owner, and the owner has been able to evaluate, assess after your probation period, then we should. So that's that for now, but we'll go back to this topic of examples of abuse of power include. So the reason we say subjective, objective, and inherent bias is because domestic abuse is different. Domestic abuse is different than terrorism and occult and enmeshment, extrusion, all of that. These topics are vocabulary words that can easily be readily looked up and then could expand perception to a place of neutrality where you can develop a standard where I'd never considered that. And I knew that I had some opportunities for growth, and I didn't realize how to not rationalize that, despite knowing that I'm not inferior, but I just have some opportunities for growth. So that's why I feel like I never want to have to explore the highest level of chain of command because of zero tolerance, right? That's why we focused on success at home and mentorship. But apprenticeship is almost like realistic than mentorship because mentorship almost involves some sort of grooming, and we don't support grooming. Grooming is associated with sexual harassment and conditioning. We don't support that. Whereas apprenticeship is more matter of fact, like a skills checklist. That's it. There's no additional conversation. There's no unnecessary socialization. And sometimes people thrive better when they have that autonomy and identity where they can take calculated risks and be in an environment where there's a support if and when needed and check in if they're like looking to evolve to a certain standard of function. but someone has to be at a certain caliber of functionality to be eligible for that. And if people learn about that kind of program, they can work to be eligible for that. There can be realistic standards. So we really quickly, we just want to make sure that with absolute formality, we have the support of the legitimacy of who we are. And we really did, I mean, this has just been absolutely horrible. But we have an indication of the reality, and I'm trying to understand how this was all coexisting. So we just want to, so that was before. So Dad, one of the brothers, I think, was shedding light. I am responsible for myself, and if there are any questions, but that's part of, I do answer directly, that's where I say that. We did try to get lab values, so that's been, but that would be classified. Whereas like husband, but he's if there's a brother that can support the examples of abuse of power include constantly reminding an employee that they can be fired or replaced, humiliating an employee in front of his colleagues, forcing an employee to work overtime multiple times a week without additional pay, boss mistreating employees when she is in a bad mood, condescending reactions to employee questions, constantly shifting the blame on employees for their own incompetencies. What are the different types of abuse of power? Abuse of power occurs in different forms. It is categorized into physical, financial, and sexual abuse. Physical abuse involves causing bodily harm to other individuals, while financial abuse of power occurs in different ways. Some examples of abuse of power include causing emotional stress to other individuals. Another instance is when a leader engages in sexual contact with their juniors without their consent, such as touching. So we saw an example of this that excuse me. What are the consequences of abuse of power? Some consequences of abuse of power are generous. They include high employee turnover, which occurs when employees are ill-treated. As a result, they opt to look for other job opportunities. Additionally, abuse of power causes stress to employees, resulting in low performance. What are the three types of power abuse? Abuse of power occurs in different forms, such as physical, financial, and sexual abuse. Physical abuse involves causing bodily harm to other individuals, while financial abuse involves using funds meant to help the public or other individuals for personal or family gains. What is considered an abuse of power? Every situation in which an individual uses their authority to look down upon a less powerful individual is considered an abuse of power. When an individual in charge takes advantage of his power to bully, manipulate, and intimidate his subordinates is considered an abuse of power. Abuse of power also occurs when leader financially, physically, or sexually abuses employees. What is abuse of power? Ownership. Abuse of power was historically common. It is also typical today due to advanced technology and so social changes. Um, Abuse of power is defined as using a powerful position to take unfair advantage of others in a given organization or public office for government. Power refers to the ability to influence the actions and behavior of other individuals with or without resistance to either particular objective. In simple terms, it is abuse of power is the abuse of power is the ability to exert authority over an individual to get things done. Power refers to the ability to influence actions and behaviors of other individuals with or without resistance to achieve a particular objective. In simple terms, it is the ability to exert authority over an individual to get things done. Use of power and leadership is bullying that involves misusing superiors' authority in the workplace. Higher ranking officials who abuse authority usually tend to harass the juniors, thus negatively affecting performance and the company's success. Abuse of power and leadership involves blackballing and public criticism and ridicule. Misuse of power is primarily based on deceit and is quite common in places with inadequate supervision of superiors. The most common areas of power harassment include schools, universities, colleges, private organizations, churches, hospitals, and public offices. Other names of abuse of power include misconduct, mismanagement, power harassment, corruption, incompetence, malpractice, negligence, ill treatment, misconduct, exploitation, bad government, etc. So when interviewing people, there's almost like we wonder if there should be a neuropsych team with every corporation for like professional intake. If there's a way to kind of remove stigma and just focus on the ability to participate in team building while developing certain skill sets. And if maybe that's the best approach for interview. I learned about this job, I read this job, I learned about the job title, job description. These are my credentials. And to just be very honest about why the job is an optimal job, whether it's the pay and the skill sets, and that, how that can help the potential candidate for whatever their short-term and long-term goals are. Some companies, we would have to talk to Bruce, since that's right there, because this is where we try to distinguish, like, home life is separate from the world's economy, and so that's all. But what I mean to say is that in consideration of constitutional rights, because that's why a lot of people immigrated to America, because they wanted to have the right to earn money and the appreciation of the currency here. And there's such a deviation from the standard of constitutional rights that every corporation should take into consideration for the mission statement. So the mission statements, Howard was really, he was very progressive in how he kind of worked with us, if that's the right way to say that, where a lot of mission statements are too subjective. And they almost kind of like, well, we want to promote positive psychology and development and flourishing and all that from a place of neutrality, like no stigma. and very matter of fact, like almost compassionate, apathetic, sympathetic, but not delving into what we could never know, right? And we're shocked and stunned by how often we're learning that that's what workspaces are. So then there's employees that risk ridicule and being outcasted because they rush to their corner to their office. But that's like booming. So as far as fifth generation warfare, it's kind of like hazing, flinching, that's not supposed to exist. So the fire department is different. We'll live at their headquarters a few days a week or something like that. But if we just get more actual examples. So really quickly, just to explicitly communicate with husband and family. This is a very step-by-step.